The surrender came on a Tuesday morning when the galaxy had finally learned what real power looked like. Council Prime Nexus stood before the Galactic Assembly, his crystal body cracked and dim with defeat. His voice, which had once commanded respect from billions of beings, now shook with fear as he spoke. The Galactic Council formally requests an immediate ceasefire from human forces, he announced. The words felt like poison in his mouth. After centuries of dismissing human complaints, he was now begging the same species he had once called primitive and worthless ambassador. Jung-Woo walked into the council chamber wearing a simple black uniform instead of the fancy diplomatic robes he used to wear. His face showed no emotion as he looked at the alien leaders who had ignored his people's suffering for so many years. Jung-Woo had watched his own family die in the New Bizan massacre. His wife and 2 young daughters had been burned alive by Valkyrie raiders while he was away on a diplomatic mission. The Valkyrie had sent him video recordings of their deaths as a joke. The terms are not negotiable, Jung-Woo said in a voice that was quiet but carried absolute authority. Every enslaved human will be returned within 30 days. Full reparations will be paid for every attack on human civilians. Humanity will hold permanent seats on this council, with veto power over any decision affecting human interests. The alien council members who had once treated humans like annoying insects now sat in terrified silence. They had seen their greatest military powers reduced to helpless victims in a matter of weeks. The galaxy had learned that humans were not just another species, they were the apex predators. Council Prime Nexus tried to negotiate, but Jung-Woo cut him off with a gesture. The time for negotiation ended when you decided that murdering human children was acceptable. The galaxy spent decades teaching us that only strength matters. You succeeded in that lesson completely, Commander. Min-Su oversaw the new galactic order from the Bridge of Humanity, first openly revealed dreadnought. The ship was called Justice, and it was larger than most space stations. The vessel had weapons that could crack moons in half and shields that could stop supernovas. The species that had once terrorized human colonies now lived under the protection of human fleets. The galaxy had become a much safer place almost overnight. Pirates and raiders who had operated freely for centuries were being hunted down and eliminated with ruthless efficiency. The Quarry Federation discovered that their most secure databases had been compromised for decades. Human hackers had been reading their most classified files and watching their most secret operations. The Aquari, who prided themselves on information gathering, had been completely outmatched. The Valkyrie homeworld was now occupied by human peacekeeping forces. The lizard creatures who had once laughed while hunting human children now worked in labor camps rebuilding the colonies they had destroyed. Every Valkyrie who had participated in attacks on civilians was made to watch recordings of their victims while they worked. The Thaxian Empire had collapsed completely without its military might. Human forces had systematically dismantled every aspect of Thaxian power, leaving them as a minor species confined to their home system. The metal warriors who had once conquered thousands of worlds were now prisoners on their own planet. The Christine Collective existed only as a shadow of its former self. The crystal creatures who had tortured humans for entertainment were slowly starving as human ships continued to broadcast energy frequencies that made feeding impossible. Their beautiful crystal cities were cracking and crumbling without the energy needed to maintain them. Molten clans had learned that their volcanic strength meant nothing against human technology. Their rock bodies that had seemed invincible were easily shattered by weapons designed specifically to exploit their weaknesses. The clans who had enslaved humans for sport were now rebuilding human settlements with their own hands. President Hana stood before the memorial on New Earth, reading the names of every human who had died during the years of unprovoked alien attacks. The list was long, containing thousands of names, including entire families who had been murdered together. We built this memorial not to celebrate victory, but to remember the cost of peace, she said to the gathered crowd. Our greatest strength was never our weapons or our technology. It was our ability to remember both kindness and cruelty. The galaxy chose to teach us cruelty, and we learned that lesson completely. Children from across human space had come to see the memorial. Many of them had lost family members to alien attacks. They stood quietly as president. Hannah spoke, understanding that they were witnessing the end of one age and the beginning of another. The galaxy had tried to break humanity's spirit through decades of unprovoked attacks. Instead, they had forged humans into something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. A species that combined advanced technology with perfect memory and absolute determination. Human fleets now patrolled trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for centuries. Merchant ships of all species could travel safely, knowing that human warships were watching. Human protection had become the most valuable commodity. In the galaxy, the old system where the strong preyed on the weak was gone. Aggressive species found themselves facing swift human retaliation that was perfectly calculated to end conflicts before they could spread. The galaxy had peace for the first time in its recorded history. Years passed and alien children grew up in a galaxy where unprovoked attacks were unthinkable. They learned about the time before human intervention, when entire species lived in fear of stronger neighbors. They studied the historical records showing how the galaxy had been consumed by endless wars and cruelty. Textbooks taught them about the species that had tried to exterminate humanity, and how those attacks had awakened something that changed the galaxy forever. Students learned that humans had possessed incredible military power all along, but had chosen to use diplomacy instead. Learned about the patience of humans who had endured decades of attacks while trying to solve problems with words. They studied the final breaking point, when human patience had been exhausted and the galaxy had learned what justice looked like when enforced by those who understood suffering. The memorial on New Earth became a pilgrimage site for beings from across the galaxy. Alien visitors would stand before the wall of names, understanding that each name represented a choice their species had made. The choice to show cruelty instead of kindness to the most patient species in the galaxy. Old Valkyrie, who had survived the occupation, would tell their children about the time when their species had thought humans were weak. They would describe the laughter that had filled Valkyrie ships while they hunted human civilians, and the silence that had followed when human warships appeared. Former Thaxian warriors would speak quietly about the empire they had lost through their own arrogance. They had believed that strength meant the ability to hurt others. Now they understood that true strength meant the ability to protect others. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in its history: the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. Humans had always been capable of devastating warfare, but had chosen peace instead. When that choice was taken away, the results had changed the galaxy forever. Species forgot the day humanity patience snapped for good, because it was the day the galaxy finally learned what happened when the most dangerous species decided to stop pretending to be harmless. The lesson had been written in fire across 1,000 worlds and would be remembered until the stars themselves burned out. Fleet Admiral Kyungmin stood on the command deck of her flagship, watching the Thaxian capital system burn in the distance. She had not ordered her ships to attack the planet directly. Instead, she had done something much more cruel and effective. She had trapped the entire Thaxian leadership on their own homeworld, while systematically destroying everything they had built in space. The Thaxians were a proud warrior race who had conquered half the galaxy through brutal force. Their empire stretched across thousands of star systems, and they had never lost a major battle in their entire history. But now they were prisoners on their own planet, watching their empire crumble from space. Every Thaxian space station was gone. Every orbital facility had been destroyed. Every ship that tried to leave the planet was vaporized before it could escape the atmosphere. The Thaxians, who had once ruled through fear, now cowered in underground bunkers, while human ships patrolled overhead like vultures. Emperor Malthrax was the supreme ruler of the Thaxian Empire. He was a massive metal creature with glowing red eyes who had personally led the conquest of dozens of worlds. He had made videos of himself crushing human prisoners with his bare hands and sent them across the galaxy as warnings. Now Malthrak sat in his palace bunker, deep beneath the planet's surface, watching reports of his empire being systematically dismantled. Human fleets were cutting off supply lines between Thaxian worlds, leaving entire systems isolated and defenseless. Without support from the capital, the Thaxian colonies were surrendering one by one. Dr. Suman worked in the Human Psychological Warfare Division, creating messages that would break the spirit of enemy species. She had studied alien psychology for 20 years, learning exactly what would cause maximum fear and despair in each race. Latest project was a broadcast that would be sent to every alien world in the galaxy. The message was simple but terrifying. It showed recordings of human children singing lullabies and playing games. These were children who had been murdered by various alien species in unprovoked attacks. After each recording of happy human children, the message showed the exact coordinates of every military leader who had ordered attacks on human civilians. The message was clear. Humanity remembered every single death and knew exactly where to find those responsible. The broadcast ended with a countdown timer showing how long each war criminal had left to live. Human assassination squads were already moving toward their targets using stealth technology that made them impossible to detect. The aliens who had thought murdering human children was entertaining were about to learn what real terror felt like. The molten clans had built their entire culture around the belief that physical strength determined who deserved to rule. They had enslaved weaker species for thousands of years, believing that might made right. Their warrior culture celebrated violence and cruelty as the highest virtue. Sergeant Jayan led his unit through the underground tunnels beneath the molten clan capital city. The clans had thought their volcanic environment made them safe from invasion, but human soldiers moved through the lava tubes like they owned them. Human soldiers wore environmental suits that not only protected them from the heat, but actually used the volcanic energy to power their weapons. The suits could absorb lava and convert it into plasma that was deadly to rock-based life forms. Jayan had volunteered for this mission because his sister had been enslaved by the molten clans 5 years earlier. He had watched recordings of her being forced to work in temperatures that slowly cooked her alive while the clans laughed at her suffering. The clan warriors discovered that their rock bodies, which they thought made them invincible, were actually weaknesses when fighting humans. Human weapons could cause rapid temperature changes that cracked their stone skin like glass. They could also vibrate at frequencies that shattered rock from the inside. Chief Magma Lord Infernus was the greatest clan warrior who had personally killed thousands of slaves for entertainment. He stood 12 feet tall and was made of living volcanic rock that could regenerate from almost any damage. But when human soldiers found him, his rock body crumbled to dust in seconds. Captain Naong commanded the blockade of the Kristen collective core systems, using weapons that turned their own crystal technology against them. The Kristen had grown powerful by absorbing energy from other species, but human ships generated energy that was pure poison to crystal-based life. The Kristen homeworld was a planet-sized crystal that had been growing for millions of years. The entire planet was alive, thinking and feeling like a single massive organism. Billions of smaller crystalline creatures lived on its surface, feeding off the planet energy. Human ships surrounded the crystal planet and began broadcasting energy frequencies that caused the planetary crystal to vibrate at its natural breaking point. The entire world began to sing a deep, haunting note that grew louder and more painful as cracks appeared in the planet's surface. Queen Eternal Brightness felt her world dying around her. The energy that had sustained her for 10,000 years was turning toxic. The smaller crystalline creatures were shattering one by one as the planet itself began to break apart. For the first time in her ancient existence, the Queen felt hunger. The human ships were not just blocking energy, they were actively draining it from the crystal planet. The Kristen, who had never known want or need, were experiencing starvation. The galaxy communication networks carried stories that would be remembered forever. The patient humans who had endured insults and attacks for generations had revealed themselves to be the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. What made the stories even more terrifying was that humans were not fighting with emotion or hatred. They moved with cold mechanical precision, like they were following a computer program. Every human attack was perfectly calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. Species that had spent centuries bullying humans now lived in constant fear of human retaliation. Alien leaders who had once laughed at human diplomatic requests now sent desperate messages begging for mercy. The Valkyrie, who had thought hunting humans was entertaining sport, now found themselves being hunted across the galaxy. Human kill teams appeared on Valkyrie worlds like ghosts, eliminating war criminals with surgical precision before vanishing without a trace. The Thaxians, who had made videos of torturing human prisoners, discovered that humans had been making their own videos. The recordings showed Thaxian leaders in their most private moments, revealing their weakness and cowardice when they thought no one was watching. The galaxy had spent decades teaching humans that only strength mattered, that peaceful species deserved to be conquered, and enslaved, that diplomatic solutions were signs of weakness. Now humanity was demonstrating that they had learned these lessons perfectly. Alien children who had grown up hearing stories about weak, pathetic humans now learned new stories about the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, the humans, who smiled and offered friendship while secretly preparing for war. The old galaxy, where the strong ruled through fear and cruelty, was ending. A new galaxy was being born, where humans enforced peace through overwhelming force. The species that had created this situation through their own cruelty were about to discover what justice looked like when delivered by those who truly understood the cost of its absence. The galaxy had taught humans that might made right. Now humanity was showing them what happened when the mightiest species in the galaxy finally decided to use their full power. The lesson was one that no species would ever forget. The Christian Collective thought their mobile fortress was the strongest thing in the galaxy. It was called the Infinite Crystal, and it was bigger than Earth's moon. The fortress had weapons that could destroy entire solar systems and shields that had never been broken. In 1,000 years of war, Admiral Minho looked at the massive crystal structure through his ship's viewing screen. He had been planning this attack for 3 years, studying every detail of crystalline technology. The fortress looked beautiful with millions of colored crystals that sparkled like jewels. But Minho knew it was really a prison where thousands of humans were being tortured. The Christian creatures inside the fortress were celebrating another successful raid on human territory. They had captured a research station and taken all the scientists prisoner. The Christine loved to study other species by slowly draining their life energy while they were still alive. Minho's fleet surrounded the fortress using a technology that the Christian had never seen before. Human ships could bend space itself, making them appear in multiple places at once. Christian fortress suddenly found itself trapped inside a bubble of twisted gravity. The fortress tried to move, but space itself was holding it in place. The Christine weapons fired in all directions, but the shots curved around and missed their targets. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking the fortress from impossible angles. Inside the fortress, the Christian creatures began to panic. Their queen was a massive crystal being called the Eternal Brightness. She had lived for 10,000 years and had never felt fear before, but now her crystal body was starting to crack as human weapons hit the fortress with energy that was poison to her kind. Human ships were not just attacking, they were feeding poisoned energy directly into the fortress. The Christine had always fed on energy from other species, but this energy burned them from inside. Human scientists had spent decades learning exactly what frequency of energy would kill crystal-based life. Form's General Hunha moved through the volcanic cities of the molten clans like a ghost. Her soldiers wore armor that made them invisible to the heat sensors that the clans used to see. The armor was so advanced that it could keep a human cool even while standing in liquid lava. The molten clans had built their cities inside active volcanoes, thinking that the heat would protect them from any attack. No other species could survive temperatures that would melt steel. But humans had technology that the clans could not imagine. The clan warriors were massive creatures. Made of living rock and metal, they stood 15 feet tall and could punch through solid stone with their bare hands. They had been using human slaves to mine rare metals from the deepest parts of their volcanic worlds. Soinha watched a group of clan warriors torturing human prisoners. The prisoners were being forced to carry molten metal in buckets while the clans laughed at their pain. Any human who moved too slowly was thrown into pools of lava. The clans thought this was entertainment, and as soldiers struck without warning, they used weapons that could instantly freeze lava, turning the clan's greatest strength into weakness. The volcanic rock that made up the clan's bodies became brittle and cracked when rapidly cooled. The clan war chief, called Magnus Rex, was leading the torture session. When the attack began, one moment he was enjoying the screams of human slaves, and the next moment his body was freezing solid. The liquid rock that flowed through his veins turned to stone, and his body shattered like glass. The human soldiers moved through the volcanic cities, freeing slaves and destroying everything the clans had built. They turned the clans' own environment against them, using the heat of the volcanoes to power weapons that the clans could not defend against. On the Kristen homeworld, the queen of their species felt something she had never experienced before. Her crystal palace was cracking as human ships orbited overhead, feeding poison energy into the planet's crystal core. The energy that had once given her power was now killing her slowly. The Galactic Council met in emergency session as reports came in from across the galaxy. Every species that had attacked humans was being systematically destroyed, but in ways that seemed impossible. The humans were not just winning, they were demonstrating knowledge of alien weaknesses that should not exist. Council Prime Nexus stood before the Great Assembly Hall, his crystal body dim with fear and confusion. How did the humans know so much about every species in the galaxy? How had they hidden such powerful technology for so long? Why had they waited until now to reveal their true strength? Ambassador Dongyun entered the council chamber, carrying data tablets containing evidence of every crime committed against humanity. He had recordings of every attack, every murder, every act of cruelty that the council had ignored over the decades. Council members who had once dismissed human complaints now sat in terrified silence as Dongyun played recording after recording of their member species committing genocide against human civilians. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to deny. Here is the Valkyrie attack on New Sol Colony, Dongyun said calmly. 40,000 civilians, including 8,000 children, murdered while begging for mercy. Here is the Thaxian raid on the medical ship Hope, where they tortured doctors and nurses before killing them. Here is the Christine experiment, where they slowly drained the life from human children to study their energy patterns. The recordings went on for hours. Each one showed member species of the Galactic Council committing acts of pure evil against defenseless humans. While the Council had been telling humans to be patient and diplomatic, their member species had been treating humans like animals to be hunted for sport. The HFY Federation had always prided themselves on having the best intelligence network in the galaxy. They could gather information from anywhere and knew the secrets of every species, but now they were discovering that humans had been watching them for decades. The HFY intelligence chief, called Deep Current, received a message from human sources that chilled his water-based body to its core. The message contained detailed information about every HFY secret base, every spy operation, every piece of classified technology. Humans had not only been watching the HFY, they had been inside their computer networks for years. Human hackers had been reading every HFY message, listening to every conversation, recording every secret. The HFY had thought they were the masters of information, but humans had been several steps ahead all along. On the Valkyrie homeworld, Supreme Commander Vex stared at tactical displays that showed the complete destruction of his species' military might. Human fleets were appearing simultaneously across dozens of star systems, destroying Valkyrie ships with weapons that seemed to ignore all known laws of physics. The Valkyrie had always believed they were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved countless species. Their military might had never been challenged by anyone, but human fleets were cutting through Valkyrie. Defenses like they were made of paper thecks realized with growing horror that every Valkyrie attack on human targets had been carefully observed and studied. Humans had been learning Valkyrie tactics and technology while pretending to be helpless victims. Now they were using that knowledge to destroy the Valkyrie with surgical precision. The galaxy-wide communication networks carried stories that would become legends. Human ships moving like ghosts through space, striking impossible targets. With perfect coordination, species that had terrorized humans for decades being reduced to helpless victims in a matter of days. What terrified the aliens most was that humans were not fighting with rage or hatred. They moved with cold, calculated precision like machines following a program. Every human attack was perfectly timed and coordinated with attacks happening on the other side of the galaxy. Galaxy was learning that human patience had not been weakness, it had been preparation. Humans had spent decades studying their enemies, learning their weaknesses, building weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses, all while pretending to be helpless and hoping for peace. The age of alien dominance was ending. The galaxy had created its own destroyer by teaching humans that only strength mattered. Now humanity was showing the galaxy what real strength looked like. Fleet Admiral Taeyeon sat in his secret command center deep beneath the surface of Mars. The room had been hidden for 50 years, waiting for this exact moment. His hands shook slightly as he opened the sealed orders that said Operation Sleeping Dragon across the top in big red letters. For decades the galaxy thought they knew everything about human military power. They had seen the small defense fleets that protected human colonies. They had watched human ships run away from fights instead of fighting back. What they did not know was that this was all pretend. Human military leaders had been preparing for this day since the first alien attack. The real human fleet had been hidden in asteroid fields and behind moons all across human space. There were secret bases built inside rocks and dead planets. The aliens had been so busy laughing at weak human ships that they never looked for the strong ones. The strongest human ships had never been seen by any alien eyes. Commander Soo-young received her orders while her squadron was hidden behind a large asteroid near the Valkyrie border. She had been waiting for 2 years, pretending to be a simple patrol captain. Her real job was much more important. She commanded the most advanced human warships ever built, ships that could destroy entire alien fleets without being detected. Her target was a group of Valkyrie ships that had been attacking human trade vessels for months. The Valkyrie thought it was a fun game to hunt down defenseless human freighters and kill everyone on board. They would take pictures of the burning ships and send them to other Valkyrie as entertainments. Soon checked her weapons one more time. The human ships carried technology that was decades ahead of anything the aliens had. The galaxy thought humans were behind in science and technology. This was another lie. Human scientists had been studying alien weaknesses for 60 years. While pretending to be grateful students move into attack position, Soo-young ordered her pilots. The 5 human ships became invisible using stealth systems that bent light around them. The Valkyrie had no idea that death was approaching them from 5 different directions. The Valkyrie patrol leader was called Zekt. He was a large lizard creature with scars covering his face from many battles. He was telling his crew about the human ship they had destroyed yesterday. When the attack began, his ship simply exploded without warning. One moment he was laughing about dead humans, and the next moment he was dead too. The other Valkyrie ships tried back, but their weapons could not hit targets they could not see. Human plasma cannons tore through Valkyrie armor like it was made of paper. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, there were no Valkyrie survivors and no evidence that humans had been their engineer. Junho worked in the massive underground factories beneath Mars. He had been building secret weapons for 20 years while the galaxy thought humans only made farming equipment and medical supplies. The weapons he built could crack planets in half or make suns explode early. The aliens had made a big mistake when they shared their technology with humans. They thought they were being generous teachers helping primitive students. What they actually did was give humans detailed information about how to destroy every alien race in the galaxy. Human scientists learned that Valkyrie bones would break if exposed to certain sound frequencies. They discovered that Thaxian metal bodies would melt when hit with specific types of radiation. They found out that crystalline creatures would shatter if their energy frequency was disrupted. And they learned that molten clan rock bodies would crumble if cooled down too quickly. The Thaxian raiding fleet had been terrorizing human colonies in the Outer Rim for 6 months. They thought humans were such easy targets that they stopped being careful. Captain Yeji was waiting for them when they arrived at their next target. The Thaxians expected to find another helpless human colony. Instead, they found the human dreadnought Retribution waiting for them. The ship was massive, larger than anything humans were supposed to have. It appeared out of nowhere using cloaking technology that made it completely invisible. Captain Yeji had lost her own family to a Thaxian raid 2 years earlier. She had volunteered for this mission because she wanted personal revenge. The Thaxians had made videos of her children begging for help before they killed them. Now it was time for the Thaxians to beg. The Thaxian fleet commander was called Kronx. He was a giant metal creature with glowing red eyes. He had destroyed hundreds of human ships and thought this would be another easy victory. His ships charged forward with their weapons firing. The human shields absorbed every shot without taking any damage. Thaxian weapons were designed to fight other metal creatures, not the advanced materials that humans had developed. The human ship fired back with weapons that turned Thaxian metal into liquid. Kronx watched his fleet melt around him. His metal skin began to bubble and run like water as the human radiation weapons hit his ship. He tried to send a distress call, but human jamming technology blocked all communications. His last thought was wondering how humans had become so powerful so fast across the galaxy. Similar scenes were happening wherever aliens had been attacking humans. The patient, diplomatic humans were gone. Replacing them were human warriors who had studied alien weaknesses for decades and built weapons specifically designed to exploit them. The crystalline collective mobile fortress called Eternal Light had been harvesting energy from human research stations for months. The crystalline creatures fed on electrical energy like humans fed on food. They thought human technology was primitive and easy to steal. Admiral Minho approached the fortress with a fleet of human ships that the Kristen had never seen before. Ships generated a special type of energy that was poison to crystal-based life forms. Instead of feeding the Kristen, this energy would slowly kill them. The Kristen fortress was huge, bigger than most human cities. It had thousands of crystal creatures living inside who had been torturing human prisoners for entertainment. They liked to watch other species suffer while they absorbed their life energy. When the human ships arrived, the Kristen tried to drain energy from them as usual. But instead of normal energy, they got something that burned them from the inside. The crystal creatures began screaming as their bodies started to crack and shatter. The molten clans had been enslaving humans for years, forcing them to work in mines that were hot enough to melt metal. The clans thought their rock and lava bodies made them impossible to hurt. They had never met anything that could survive the heat of their home. World's General Yunhe led the liberation of human slaves from molten clan worlds. Her soldiers wore special armor that made them invisible to heat sensors. The armor also kept them cool, even in temperatures that would melt steel. The molten clans never saw them coming. The clans had built their cities inside active volcanoes, thinking this made them safe from attack. Human soldiers moved through the lava tubes like ghosts, using the clan's own environment against them. They had weapons that could freeze lava, instantly turning the clan's strength into weakness. The galaxy-wide communication networks began carrying reports that terrified every alien species. Human fleets were appearing everywhere, destroying any ships that had attacked human targets. The humans fought with a precision and knowledge that seemed impossible. What scared the aliens most was that humans were not angry or emotional. They fought like machines following careful plans that had been prepared years in advance. Every human attack was perfectly coordinated with other attacks, happening thousands of light years away. The Galactic Council received reports from across the galaxy that their member species were being systematically destroyed by human forces that no one had known existed. The humans had revealed themselves to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Council Prime Nexus realized that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that human patience meant human weakness. They had thought that human diplomacy meant human inability to fight. Now they were learning the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. The age of human suffering was ending. Age of alien fear was just beginning. Captain G1 stood at the big window of his ship, watching another human colony burn in space. The flames were bright orange and red against the black darkness. The ship was called Harmony, and it was supposed to bring peace between different alien races. But today, there was no peace, only death and sadness. The Valkyrie aliens had attacked again without warning. They always said humans were taking too much space in the galaxy, but that was not true. Humans only wanted small planets that nobody else wanted. The Valkyrie just liked to hurt people who could not fight back properly. They were big lizard creatures with sharp teeth and mean yellow eyes. G1 had been a captain for 20 years. He had seen many bad things, but this was the worst. The colony ship that was burning had 300 families on it. Most of them were farmers who just wanted to grow food and live quietly. They had children who went to school every day and played games after dinner. Now they were all dead. Ambassador Hinwu walked over to G1 with tears in his eyes, but he tried to hide them. Hinwu was the man who talked to other alien races for Earth. He was supposed to make friends and solve problems with words, not weapons. But words did not work when the other side only wanted to kill. Just sent the report to Earth Command, Hinwu said quietly. His voice was shaking a little. 300 people are dead, including 42 children. The Valkyrie targeted the school first, then the hospital. They wanted to make sure nobody survived. G1 felt anger growing in his chest like a hot fire. The Valkyrie always did this. They would attack human ships and colonies, then laugh about it. The worst part was they recorded everything. They liked to watch humans run and scream. That for help. Dear Minji was working at her computer, trying to collect evidence from the destroyed colony ship. She was a smart woman who studied alien weapons and technology. Her job was to prove when aliens broke the galactic laws, but nobody ever got punished, even when she had perfect proof. The Valkyrie used plasma weapons that were banned by galactic law. Minji told the others, "These weapons burn everything so hot that nothing is left, not even bones. But look at this." She showed them a video recording. The Valkyrie soldiers were laughing while they hunted down people who were trying to escape. They thought it was fun on Earth. President Sunho sat in his big office with his military advisors around him. They were all looking at reports from across the galaxy. The news was always bad these days. It was not just the Valkyrie who attacked humans. Many alien races thought humans were weak and easy targets. The Thaxian Empire had been stopping human trade ships and stealing everything inside. The Thaxians looked like giant metal robots, but they were actually living creatures, made of some kind of space metal. They were very strong and loved to fight. They took human goods, and sometimes took humans as slaves. Christian Collective was even worse. They were made of living crystal that could think and move. They had taken over 5 human research stations in the past year. The humans working there were probably dead or being used for terrible experiments. The Christian liked to study other life forms by cutting them apart while they were still alive. The molten clans were the most cruel of all. They lived on planets covered in lava and fire. They were made of rock and metal that could move and think. They had been taking human colonists as slaves for years. They made humans work in their hot mines until they died. The molten clans thought this was normal because they were stronger. Every time humans complained to the Galactic Council, nothing happened. The council was supposed to keep peace in the galaxy, but they only helped the big strong alien races. The council members were all very old aliens, who had been around for thousands of years. They thought humans were too new and weak to matter. General Tayan had been telling the president for months that diplomacy was not working. He was the head of Earth military forces, but the government always told him to wait and try talking more. Tayan knew that aliens only respected strength. They had been testing humans for years, seeing how much they could hurt them before humans would fight back. Sir, we cannot keep letting this happen. Tayan said to President Sunho, our people are dying every day. The aliens think we are cowards because we always try to talk instead of fight. They will never stop until we make them stop. But the president still believed in peace. He thought there had to be a way to solve problems without war. Humans had learned from their own history that war was terrible and should be avoided. But sometimes avoiding war just made things worse. The final terrible moment came when the Galactic Council met to discuss the latest attacks. Ambassador Dong-Yun stood before the huge alien creatures who ruled the galaxy. He had prepared a speech about the attacks on human colonies. He had evidence and recordings and witness reports. Council Prime Nexus was the leader of the Galactic Council. He was a giant creature made of blue crystal that was 20 feet tall. His voice sounded like ice breaking when he spoke. He looked down at the human ambassador like he was looking at a small insect. Council has reviewed your complaints, Human Nexus said with no emotion in his voice. We have decided that newer species must learn their place in the cosmic order. Perhaps if humans were not so aggressive in expanding to new worlds, these unfortunate incidents would not occur. The other council members made sounds of agreement. They were all massive creatures that had conquered many worlds. The idea that small, weak humans deserved the same treatment as them was funny to them. They thought humans should be grateful just to be allowed in the galaxy at all. Ambassador Dong-Yun could not believe what he was hearing. The council was saying that humans deserved to be attacked and killed just for trying to live on empty planets. It was like blaming someone for being robbed because they walked down the street. That night, every human ship in the galaxy received the same message from Earth. It was short and simple, but it changed everything. The message said diplomatic protocols are hereby suspended. All human civilians are ordered to return to protected systems immediately. Humanity is coming home. Captain G1 read the message 3 times before he understood what it meant. For 60 years, humans had tried to be good galactic citizens. They had followed all the rules and tried to make friends with alien races. They had taken insults and attacks and tried to solve everything with words. But the galaxy had taught humans a lesson. The lesson was that only strength mattered. Only the ability to hurt others got respect. The aliens had spent years showing humans that being peaceful made you a target. Being kind made you weak. Being civilized made you prey. President Sunho signed the orders that night with a heavy heart. He knew that everything was about to change. The patient, diplomatic humans that the galaxy knew were about to disappear forever. In their place would come something that the aliens had created through their own cruelty and contempt. The age of human patience was over. Galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they stopped holding back.